Thank you for listening to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast, available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Stitcher. Also, please follow Matt's Movie Reviews on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Reddit, Instagram, and MeWe. And of course, be sure to visit mattsmoviereviews.net for the latest reviews, top 10 lists, and more. Now, on to the show.
So, any requests at all for me to do anything? Okay, is it private now? Anyway, someone liked it. Thank you for the like, whoever liked it.
People cannot grasp what is going on.
The case of Girl 1. We're watching a little girl grow up.
It's really horrific, yes.
The abuser certainly seemed to want to shock.
These videos
Being distributed across the world. It's just a wave that hits you every single day that you come in. At Task Force Argos, we are that thin blue line.
They're going to help regardless of where they're at in the world.
We uncovered the criminal enterprise, a hierarchical structure focused on the sexual exploitation of children.
There was a car.
The bedspread.
Crime scene.
Where are the gaps? The clock is ticking.
They saved the little girl.
Opened Pandora's box.
This was a case into a sea of other cases.
The sheer amount of content has soared.
And all it did was take us to another haystack full of needles.
It's brutal.
With arrests in Asia, New Zealand.
There's things that will never leave you, ever.
We just can't leave them. Any weapon, any tool that is available, I'm gonna use it.
This is a village issue, a global village issue.
When somebody asks you to bring your skills to the table because children are being abused, there is no such thing as no. Not my world.
Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 380. Making its national TV debut this October 24 on SBS is The Children in the Pictures, a documentary that takes us into Task Force Argos, an Australian investigative team that goes undercover to rescue children from online sexual abuse. An incredibly important film that dives to the darkest corners of the dark web while shining a light on those heroes in law enforcement who have sworn to combat the scourge of child exploitation pornography. The Children in the Pictures is also a call to arms for all communities to expose and fight against an insidious and ever-growing monster that has our children in its sights. And joining me now are the directors of The Children in the Pictures, Akhim and Simon Nasht. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Matthew. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Matthew.
Okay, Dave, I'm going to ask you first. So 8 years ago, you were interviewing a prisoner, I believe it was at Long Bay Prison. And what information came up in that conversation that pretty much got the ball rolling for this documentary? What was it that you learned in that conversation? What was it about that information that really got the ball moving that you wanted to make a documentary about it?
I think at the time there was there'd been a lot of talk about the dark web, Silk Road, arms exchanges, all that sort of stuff in this, nebulous, unexplored, unindexed part of the web, which I had no idea about. A part of me even thought it was, maybe mythical, for want of a better word. But I guess the chilling part was, the guy said, look, even myself as a child sex offender, even I can't grasp the scale of what's happening on the dark web, and he mentioned that it was very rapid fire, but he was, mentioning these communities with, tens of thousands of members, the amount of material, the severity of the material. And I left the prison, as you do when those gates close behind you and you're on the other side, you feel a sense of relief, and it gives you a bit of time to ruminate and think. And the first thing I thought was, is it true? Could it be true? So look, to cut a long story short, I went on a bit of a guided tour of the dark web using the Tor browser, and what he said was true, and then some. I looked at a network. It said that it had 45,000 members. It was hierarchical in structure. There were roles and responsibilities. There were codes of ethics, and there was a currency, and the currency was the images, which they traded over platforms that we use ubiquitously from every day. File transferring mechanisms that are available to all of us. When I continued doing research on these networks and takeovers of networks or takedowns of networks from the law enforcement response, the name Argos, Task Force Argos, kept on popping up everywhere. It just seemed like every major incursion into child abuse trading and online child exploitation material, they had a role to play. So I reached out to John Rouse, the head of the unit. Look, he patiently told me that my observations were correct, but he was a little bit busy at that time.
Yep.
And just to wait, and he'd get back to me. And within a couple of months, 3 major boards went down, and a big investigation in the Philippines that revealed the true extent of live on-demand streaming of child abuse. They were all shut down, ironically, all involving Australian admins, and all involving Argos. In fact, the site that I had visited at that time had actually been infiltrated and was being run by Argos. So it was one of those, wow, so this is how you do it kind of moments. And, John was like, okay, well, now we can talk. And basically, that was the stage where, he just basically opened the doors to a law enforcement community, to a community of NGOs, which play a huge part in it, and tech providers. And that's where it started. And I soon realized very, very quickly I was way out of my depth in terms of the storytelling part of this. And that's when I reached out to Simon for, his wealth of knowledge and expertise.
So Simon, a lot of true crime documentary kind of deals with after the fact investigations or cold cases, etc. What you're dealing here with the whole Task Force Argos is like ongoing investigations and things that are going on. Is there parameters that are in place of what you can and cannot put on screen? And while you want to try to be as transparent as you can, I'm sure you just have to respect that process, don't you?
Absolutely. I mean, we had a couple of pretty unique challenges with this film. Firstly, I've worked with in the past a lot of archive-based films, and in this project we had an awful lot of archive, more than I've ever had in any film I've ever worked with. But the only catch was we couldn't use a single frame of it because it's every one of those images is a crime scene photograph, effectively, and a crime scene photograph taken by the perpetrator, which is one of the unusual aspects of this crime type. Secondly, obviously, the subject matter is extremely confronting.
Yes.
It's just not for everybody, that's for sure. And that is one of the challenges that I think people working in this sector, law enforcement, trauma groups, anyone dealing with child protection faces all the time, is that the subject matter is just so grim, so terrible that people switch off and will not listen. And when you consider that this is the world's fastest growing major crime, we've just had a report out from the We Protect organization this week saying, the incidences have doubled under COVID conditions because kids are locked up, perpetrators are locked up, they're online together. It's just been a perfect storm. That we're seeing instances of 60,000 individual reports of online child abuse every day.
Wow.
Every day. And so you begin to get a sense of the scale of this crime, but it, of course, is not in any way being reflected in the reporting or the public understanding of it because it's so difficult. So we had to find a way to tell the story. I think Dev and I quickly centered on the fact that, there are these remarkable people whose job it is to do these investigations every day, and they could be our way into a story that otherwise is just too shocking to consider. They are, not to use a cliche, they are remarkably heroic people, because if you can imagine every day having to deal with the confronting images that we can't even talk about, let alone show in the film, you get a sense of just how dedicated you have to be to take on this kind of work. Definitely, the toughest job in law enforcement. As one of them said to us, if you work in homicide, you're too late.
Yeah.
The victim's gone. Here, there's a desperate search to try and find that victim, to identify them and rescue them, bring them out of harm's way. So it's, it's a pretty compelling story. Yes, there were restrictions. Of course there were. There were operational restrictions. As one of our investigators in the film, Adele Desir, says in the film, listen, Dev, she speaks to Dev, I'd love to tell you how we found this guy. What was the mistake that he made that allowed us to actually zero in from anywhere in the world to anywhere in the Philippines to anywhere in this southern city, Cebu, to actually his address. How did we get there? I'd love to tell you, but I can't. Because if I tell you that, then that's useful information for perpetrators to, avoid getting into that, making that mistake again. So yes, we had to have a discussion clearly with the police about what we could and couldn't show. But I don't think in any way it restricted us from telling a pretty compelling story. But you've seen it. What do you think? Did we achieve what we hoped to?
Well, I believe you absolutely done that to the point where it has got me, as a father, you already have kind of like instinctual inclinations about the things that are going online, but you don't understand the depth of where it goes. And after watching your documentary, it's scared me shitless, to tell the truth. And I think that's a good thing.
I think that's a good thing too. I mean, we have to, as the filmmakers, strike a kind of careful balance about just how far we take the audience into the reality of what's going on with this crime. I think that's, there's no perfect way of reaching that. But I think, Dev and I had, as you can well imagine in the edit, many discussions about what we would or wouldn't show or talk about. And in the end, I think we always erred on the side of caution in that there's no point telling people a reality that is so ghastly that they'll switch off, or they won't pay attention, or frankly they'll walk out or switch it off.
And that, obviously, you've got that visceral reaction to what you've been confronted with, and a lot of the times my friends would ask me, how did it get to this scale? And the answer is that it's grown in silence. So, another mission of the documentary was, how do we develop a language where we can talk about this issue, So we as, filmmakers and I guess, standard bearers for the cause, that was a part of the job, to try and make the unspeakable speakable, to make the unwatchable and the ghastly watchable. It's a big bitter pill that we ask our audiences to swallow, but we hope at the end of it you realize that's kind of all you need to know in terms of like the horror of the crime type. Are we at the tipping point? No, we're nowhere near. A lot of work needs to be done, and that's where we hope that the film empowers our audience to take a stand and align themselves in the same way that our investigators have aligned themselves, and that's basically with putting the children first.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by 80s Tees. 80s Tees is an online retailer of licensed t-shirts and pop culture gear from your favorite movies, TV shows, cartoons, video games, comic books, and musicians. Celebrate your inner 80s nerd and click on the link in the show notes below to get the raddest retro t-shirts delivered to your door. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Loot Crate. Founded in 2012, Loot Crate is the worldwide leader in fan subscription boxes. Loot Crate partners with industry leaders in entertainment, gaming, sports, and pop culture to deliver monthly themed crates, produce interactive experiences in digital content, and film original video productions. No matter what you geek out about, Loot Crate has a subscription box for you. To get your very own exclusive collectibles, apparel, and gear delivered to your door, be sure to click on the link in the show notes below. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is also brought to you by Vudu. Watch the latest movies and TV shows anytime, anywhere. No subscriptions, no contract. Enjoy stunning quality in up to 4K ultra high definition at home, and download and watch on your mobile device as well. To rent and buy from over 100,000 titles or watch thousands of movies free with Vudu Movies on us, be sure to click on the link in the show notes below. Now, back to the show. You know, Devon, Simon, this year will be 15 years that I've been doing this stuff online. In those 15 years, I've seen changes in technology, changes in social media platforms, the approaches that they have, the things they kind of encourage users to do. I'm of the mind that very soon every single person will become a content creator online. Everyone's got a phone, everyone's got access to platforms. And one of the biggest things that people are doing now is live streaming. It's something that's really encouraged by social media networks. I don't know why that is, but it's like really a big thing right now.
Yeah, it's free content. And one of the scary things about the way this crime evolved is that content is now being sexualized, that children are being pulled into a web where it's normalized to show pictures of themselves, not just naked. I wish it was as simple as that. It's much worse than that. It's even been monetized on some platforms,
yes,
where they'll get likes and tokens and be able to convert that into a kind of currency, so that, and there are no, as we make the point in the film, there are no controls on social media platforms. There are no rules and regulations that say they must build child protection, child safety by design into their apps. It is a free for all. I think, we've seen the concerns in the last couple of weeks about Facebook and the way that young women are having their body dysmorphia because of Instagram just showing perfect bodies.
Yes,
how dangerous that is. But it is nothing. Believe me, it is nothing compared to what is going on in terms of child exploitation and sexual abuse.
And
it's the door they don't want to open.
Yeah. Look, it's going back to your original statement on how we tell a story like this. We're really fortunate to have basically, John and Paul as two central characters whose basically their whole working career is the history of the internet. They started off in the field of child protection from dial-up days right the way through to, cable optics, and now where the internet has gone mobile. So really, in a way, what we're telling is we're telling a history of the technology evolution and the move and shift from different modalities and platforms, and basically the whole concept of the internet not being regulated and being left open for abuse. But another point that I really want to emphasize, and I hope it comes clear, is it's not just girls that are suffering this. A lot of the what they call the user-generated content that's being made on the live streaming platforms, like whether it's Messenger or Instagram or TikTok or whatever, a lot of the abuse that occurs happens to boys. So yeah, it's I think the most frightening statistic is basically, 1 in 3 children will identify as having been exposed to some form of grooming technique by the time they're 14, 15.
So after people are going to watch this documentary, which is on the 24th on SBS, what do you think is the steps that people should take, especially parents, in regards to making sure that their children are not ensnared in this web, that's happening out there? Is it just come down to the simple fact that people just need to talk to one another? Parents need to talk to kids, kids need to talk to parents, but especially parents talking to kids, they need to be frank in their discussions about things. Like, for example, I'm Catholic. I'm a practicing Catholic. And after the whole Royal Institution, the Royal Commission had its findings into institutional abuse within churches especially, I've actually had discussions with my children in regards to what is acceptable, what isn't, what people say to you, etc., when it comes to being in a church or in a school or anywhere else, actually, because I just found that it's really important that people know what, my kids know what is acceptable, what isn't. If anything happens, you talk to me straight away about it. And I have a feel I'm going to talk to them about this again in a couple of years when they're old enough to go online. Because, I don't know if you guys know, but in the last few weeks here in lockdown, all my kids have been doing is learning online. So they're getting kind of used to that sphere right now. Do you think it's just going to come down to, after your documentary, that parents need to be very frank with their kids, the discussions in regards to what to look out for in regards to being on internet, and to just be open to talk about anything? There's no such thing as you done something bad. It's just about learning from this and trying to grow together in regards to all of it.
I mean, absolutely. Discussion and talking about it is the first step. You have to be able to broach that conversation in some way and do it in an age appropriate way as well. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we're dealing with, of course, is the extreme end of the spectrum. But I've got a 21-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I remember when the 6-year-old was 3, she could unlock my phone. Yeah, she could rummage around on it. And I think at that age we don't want to terrify our children. But at the same time we talk about stranger danger. Yes, but we never kind of extrapolate on that and say, the most chance of you bumping into a stranger is online. But I think it's got to be even more simplified than that. And we've got to start teaching our kids, I call it internet hygiene. Mm-hmm. And basically, what's right and wrong about the internet, how much time you should spend on it, how attached you are to your device. I think, and that's got to really start at a preschool level. Mm-hmm. By the time you get to teenagers who are 14, 15, and I remember when I was a teenager, of course, I went through, natural risk-taking behaviours and stuff like that. You're almost too late, I think. I think you kind of like, what we hope happens then is that victims that have been abused have the courage then to report that to their parents and discuss it with their parents and say, hey, look, this has happened to me. But ultimately, I hope that these are the first steps in, trying to create a society where, we're not talking about children as victims. Mm-hmm. We're talking about them as assets that we're trying to protect.
Yes. Very good. Simon?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, there's ignorance on both sides amongst parents not aware of what's going on and kids not aware of the risks they're running by sharing images. So you're right. There are many things that can be done, and we'll be working on some of those directly at legislative level, with the technology companies. But in the family, at home, you have to establish trust with your kids to talk about this subject. That is the number one lesson that all of the specialists in this field return to us. Big mistake to take the phone away from the kids, because it just goes underground then. Believe me, they'll find a way to access what they want, whether you know about it or not. So better to have it out in the open. And, of course, the crime works on children being shamed, being embarrassed, being manipulated and extorted and it escalates from there. One image leads to a more risque image, leads to a more dangerous image, and that happens very quickly. It can happen within minutes, actually. And so the child is trapped and has nowhere to turn. But if they have the knowledge that they're not going to be blamed by mum and dad, that they're not going to have the phone taken away by mum and dad, but to stop it before it gets serious, and it gets serious, it can lead quickly. We've heard of a case, Dev and I, and it's not unique, from a specialist psychologist that deals in, if you told us the story of a sextortion online from first contact to suicide, and that process took a week. From first contact to that child killing itself out of shame, 7 days. And that is a far from unusual occurrence these days. It's awful to think that, but it needs to be, you need to establish that conversation, that level of trust with your child about their online life, because let's face it, for the current younger generation, and we're talking quite young kids now, it's the only world they know.
Yeah.
You cannot take away their social media from them. It's like cutting off their right arm. So you have to build into that a level of trust and understanding about the risks, and it doesn't restrict them from, having an active social life online, but it does make them aware of what to look out for and to come and seek help if they're in trouble.
I think another thing is that, we really hope that, by opening up that discussion, we end up in a dialogue with the people who are the manufacturers of apps and social media platforms, and just encourage them that, for future developments, to basically have safety inbuilt by design from the get-go, rather than trying to plug the dam. And I think also another thing that we've got to realise is that, our documentary is basically focused on internet-facilitated crimes against children. And corporations have a role to play in that. And I mean, every corporation has the role in terms of protecting and preserving their own intranet spaces. Because, we are talking about billions of images now that are being circulated, but 1 in 1,000 of child abuse images are discovered in a workplace.
Wow.
So even adults and companies, I believe there should be a corporate responsibility to protect their workers from this as well. And I guess all we're trying to really achieve is, this problem exists. We've let it grow and expand for far too long, and we're not claiming to provide all the solutions, but we're hoping that it'll encourage enough conversation where, the smartest guys in the room can work towards that.
So for everyone out there listening, The Children in the Picture is going to have its national TV debut on SBS this October 24, 8:30 p.m. I highly recommend that everyone watch this movie. It is an important documentary, important film about an important subject, and more that people are exposed to it, the more that they talk about it, I think the better everyone will be. As it says in the documentary, this is a global village, and it needs a whole village to come together and really take care of the issues here and take care of our children, and especially with emerging digital trends that we've been talking about in this documentary. And Dev and Simon, I thank you both so very much for your time today. Congratulations to both of you for the documentary. Best of luck with the release, and I know you have a premiere tonight at Indy Newton. Best of luck with that as well, and hopefully this is the beginning for a lot of people to really open their eyes and talk about these issues and really get to the bottom of it, because we surely do need it, I think.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Just to add, it's available on SBS Online for another 30 days, of course. So if you can't catch it at the weekend, it's still available to watch there, and watch it with your family.
Thank you for letting me know. Thank you both so much for your time today, and again, congratulations with the documentary.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matthew.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content. Also, if you would like to request a review and support my work, please join my Patreon via the link in the description below.